With all the ATF's new ideas around the pistol brace, there's only one compromise they can make for us that actually makes sense. I apologize if my voice cracks out or it gets kind of dry. I inadvertently exposed myself to mustard gas last night. It wasn't in a high enough concentration to really do damage, but I did get a little bit of blood, and my eyes are still quite sore and hurts really bad right here. And the sponsor of today's video is Got Your 6 app. It's this really cool app you can log on to, get all the up-to-date gun laws that they're trying to hammer through so you can fight them as they come out. It's even got a panic button so you can press it, which will turn the GPS on your phone so the people in your groups you formed can find you and give you help when you need it the most. Pre-register today for $2.99 at GotYour6app.com. So back to the pistol braces. They need to make a compromise for us. What they're doing right now is horrible. Basically, the way it's looking, again, we don't know much of anything about what they're doing because it's all behind closed doors. But what it's looking like is instead of making this part illegal or legal, they want you to mail your firearm into the feds. They'll inspect it, decide whether or not it was intended to be shouldered or intended to be shot like a pistol. After they determine that, they will let you know, is this a pistol brace or a stock? Do you have a legal pistol, or did you create an SBR without paying a tax stamp? So that's completely unreasonable unless they change two things. Number one, to the whiteboard of knowledge, FFLs can handle tax stamps. So what you would do if you wanted to make an SBR, you would show up to your FFL, let them know what you're going to do, pay the $200, they'd take your fingerprints, take your photo, we'd be notarized, we'd issue you a tax stamp, and then we just notify the feds. Hey, this is a legally possessed SBR now, because the prohibited person list from a tax stamp, like a silencer or an SBR or a short barrel shotgun, is the exact same list as a 4473. So we could run a 4473 on you, issue you your tax stamp, and then send it off to the feds. Because their time right now is ridiculous. It takes them over a year to be like, okay, this guy's approved, mail out the tax stamp. That's just absurd, especially if they're going to change the goalpost on us and change the rules of the game, and now a bunch of people that legally own firearms now illegally own short barrel rifles. Number two, don't forget the 8th Amendment still applies. Now, a lot of people get confused about this because they're like, oh, you're getting 10 years in prison and a maximum of $250 fine for a machine gun. No, you're getting 10 years in prison and a $250 fine for not paying a $200 tax stamp. The 8th Amendment says it has to be reasonable to the crime you broke. What this should be, say for example, I pay my taxes late, I get a penalty of 25%. So if you get caught with an illegally manufactured silencer or a short barrel rifle or something like that, you should have to pay the tax stamp plus 25%, just like all other tax crimes. So it should cost you $250. Now say that's a machine gun, because you can't have one if it's before 1986, you should have to pay the $250 and then they confiscate the machine gun. Because you had it without paying a tax stamp on it, you got to pay the tax stamp plus a late fee, but you can't have it because it was made after 1986, so now we got to confiscate it from you. That would be reasonable. And don't forget, this is a tax thing. As a matter of fact, your tax stamp is confidential because it's tax paperwork. If you were at the shooting range and some sheriff started asking you for your tax stamp paperwork, yes, ideally you would just show it to him, because that eliminates the problem. There's no grief. However, you are not legally obligated to. As a matter of fact, he can't even call the feds and find out your tax information. Now, if he were to call the feds and say, hey, Mike Concho has a silencer, they'd be like, well, we can't tell you if it's illegal or not. And then they could look you up and be like, okay, he doesn't have a tax stamp for a silencer. We should do a raid on his house. The point being at the range, because your tax stamp is taxed, it's an actual tax, it falls under tax law, which makes it 100% confidential. Yeah, the sheriff can get red in the face and stomp his feet and try to find some other crime to bust you with and hold his breath while He calls the feds and they confirm, no, you can't actually force him to give it up. If he gives it up, it's willingly. The point is it's tax. It's even protected by tax law. So why in the shit, over a $200 tax, $200, that's it. Not $2,000, not $200,000, $200. Are you facing a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison and a $250 fine? How in the hell is that equal to the crime you've committed? You've paid a $200 tax late. The only penalty there should be is the standard late tax fee, which is 25%, which would be $250. That would be acceptable. That I could understand. Or if it's a machine gun, since you can't own one that existed before or after 1986, you pay the tax stamp plus the 25%, plus they confiscate the firearm. That makes sense. To become a felon and face 10 years in prison, plus a maximum of $250 fine, that is not equal to the crime you've committed. So I believe if they were to change these two things, one, the FFL can handle tax stamps. We do all the work. It's done right there in a timely fashion. Number two, they actually apply the 8th Amendment, because that's an actual amendment. Now, I know the 2nd Amendment says shall not be infringed, and they're clearly not applying that amendment, but still, you're protected by the 2nd Amendment. You're protected by the 8th Amendment. Oh my God, you're protected by tax law. You're protected against illegal search and seizure. They're violating all that stuff for them to charge you with an SBR. Unless, of course, you're like, oh, what? I don't have a tax stamp. If you're like, dude, it's tax law. You cannot ask, well, you can ask me for it, but I do not have any reason whatsoever to tell you my tax information. And if they still go, then yes, they're also breaking tax law. So hopefully, this video will go super viral so it catches on, because I just don't have the resources to try to fight for these first two things. If I did, I would, but I don't. But if enough people see this video, maybe some sort of group will get formed and they'll hire a lawyer and get these two things to happen, because that would be reasonable. I would be fine with the ridiculous judgments and what's been going on if, one, like I said, I could provide you your tax stamp, and if, two, the penalty was comparable to the crime. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, got my Patreon right there. I also have affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on those links and doing the Amazon shopping you're going to do anyway, I get a little kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.